Tonight, Indiana Governor Mike Braun signs a bill attempting to lure the Bears across state lines to Wolf Lake in Hammond, Indiana. But wait, Illinois lawmakers took action too. So where are the Bears going to go? We bring you up to speed on the very latest. Chicago city budget dysfunction will now cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars as big credit ratings agencies express pessimism about the city's future financial outlook. What does it mean for you?
Welcome to the Chicago Report. I'm Paris Schutz. Ratings agencies bearish on the city, but we're bearish on a new stadium. There's so much developing right now on this front, so let's use a football analogy to get everybody up to speed. If we think of the situation as overtime and Illinois is playing Indiana, Indiana just kicked a field goal, but now the Bears, they have a chance to score a touchdown to win the game still. If they don't, it looks like Indiana will walk off with it. First, the field goal. Indiana Governor Mike Braun signs bipartisan legislation to create a Northwest Indiana Sports Stadium Authority to build a giant structure in Hammond for the Bears to play in. And Braun said in a statement, quote, "We made it clear from the beginning that Indiana is open for business. I'm thrilled to sign Senate Bill 27 to create the framework to build a new world-class stadium in Northwest Indiana. Now let's get this across the goal line." In response, the Bears said, "We recognize and appreciate the advancement of mega project legislation by the Illinois House." Well, this is in response to what happened in Illinois. By the Illinois House Revenue and Finance Committee, we look forward to continued engagement as the lawmakers determine the legislative path forward. So now, Illinois has the ball. And we mentioned today they revealed their tax fairness legislation. It passed out of that House committee. It would give a mega development the size of the Bears the ability to skip paying property taxes and instead negotiate an in lieu of fee with the local taxing bodies like the Village of Arlington Heights, and then freeze that rate for up to 40 years. But here's the kicker. The House adjourned until March 18th without taking a full vote on this bill. Can the Bears wait that long to see if it advances, or will they be forced to go with the option that's made it through the uprights in Indiana? The only folks who know the answer to that question work at Hallis Hall in Lake Forest. And joining us with the view from the Hoosier State is Indiana State Representative Earl Harris, a Democrat from East Chicago. Representative Harris, thanks for speaking with us. So Governor Braun put the odds now at 50-50 since he signed this bill. Is that where you'd put the odds that they're coming to Indiana?
I've been saying for a while, I would say it's higher than 50-50. I think we have shown here in Indiana how serious we are. We've put together a great package. And so I think it's going to be hard for the Bears to say no to this, but we'll see how this progresses as time goes on here.
Part of that package is up to $1 billion in subsidies paid for by taxes on things like liquor, food, hotels, perhaps a diversion of tollway revenue. How do you sell that to constituents that say, we're having a hard enough time paying our utility bills right now? Why do we need to give $1 billion to this organization?
That's a great question. And let's break this down because there's been a misconception that people that live in Northwest Indiana are going to have to pay a lot of high taxes for the Bears coming to us. That's actually not the reality. When you look at the innkeeper's tax, that's a tax for people that stay in hotels. Well, let's be real. If you live in Northwest Indiana, you're probably not staying at a hotel. So that's going to be money spent and paid by people that live outside of the area. So that's not local. Food and beverage tax, it's 1 penny out of $1. So yes, if we go out to eat, we're going to have to pay an additional 1 penny out of every dollar. But also, that's a lot of money coming from outside as people come in for Bears games, concerts, MMA, whatever it is, monster truck, whatever. They're going to be contributing a lot to that. So there's this myth that it's going to really tax all of us that live in Northwest Indiana hard. And that's not the reality of the situation.
All right, so trying to make those taxes disproportionately hit the visitors. Do you want to give the Bears a time frame here to commit fully to Indiana? Because their statement today didn't necessarily commit. They say they're committed to continuing their study, their due diligence on this site. Is there a time frame here that you want a commitment from them?
Well, of course, we would like that to happen as soon as possible. We've done our part. We said we would move forward with this piece of legislation. It was signed into law today by Governor Braun. So we've done our part. I'm sure there's still some conversations going on with people in the administration, people at the State House here in Indianapolis with the Chicago Bears on a regular basis. So it would be great if they were to announce that they're moving to Northwest Indiana within the next few days or the beginning of next week, but we'll see how all of that plays out time-wise.
Do you have a sense from the team of how long their due diligence is going to take studying and researching that site in Wolf Lake?
I can't say I've had that kind of direct conversation, so no, but I tell you the fact that they've put into it what they've put into it, the fact that the commissioner of the NFL was had his feet on the ground in Northwest Indiana. There's so many things that if you weren't serious about this, why would you waste time? Why would you waste money? Those to me are all good signs. And the fact that, as you mentioned, the testing, why would you test to make sure? Why would you check this out in terms of layout, where things will go? If you're not serious about making this move, no one really has time to waste like that.
Have you looked at the traffic management, or will folks have to go over the Skyway back and forth? Will they be able to take the South Shore line? What about that aspect of it?
That's another great question, and that's one of the advantages we have. We've done a great job with this. There will be some infrastructure. So going back to your question a little bit, there will be benefits for people that live in Hammond and Northwest Indiana in terms of some infrastructure, which includes roads. But it's so easy to get into Northwest Indiana. Whether you want to drive through city streets, whether you want to drive, as you said, on the highway, Skyway, you can take the train in. I mean, I've gone back and forth on the South Shore between Northwest Indiana and Chicago. So that's an easy route. And then you also look at the fact that there's an airport in Gary. So whether it's teams flying in, whether it's organizations, whether it's people flying in for games or events, access is very easy.
All right, so a lot of infrastructure upgrades could happen here if this does go through. Representative Earl Harris, Democrat from East Chicago, Indiana, thanks for speaking with us.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
You got it. And now we cross the line back into Illinois. Joining us is Arlington Heights Mayor James Tenalia, who has been hammering state lawmakers to get the Illinois bill across the finish line so they can start moving some earth at the old Arlington Park racetrack. All right, Mayor Tenalia, some good news on the Illinois front. It passed out of committee. The language of this broader bill is set, but is it concerning to you that the House adjourned before taking a full vote?
Well, it is the way it goes sometimes. You have to wait. Patience is a virtue. So I'm hoping that this is just a really great first step toward getting the job done.
And what do you think the holdup is? There's some notion that some of the Chicago lawmakers are still not on board with this.
No, I think it's a whole bunch of different things, but the main thing I think Chicago is looking for, what can they benefit from this move from Chicago to Arlington Heights? There's definitely going to be some costs involved, and I think if we are not aware that Chicago has to get its share of the pie out of this, then we're missing a boat. So everybody's going to need to be made whole. Chicago, Springfield, Arlington Heights. The Bears understand that. The Bears are, they're a wise organization. They've been around a long time.
And so are those talks ongoing about some of the money that the Bears might provide to the city for Soldier Field?
I think so. I think that whether it's, profits and taxes and things like that, there's a lot that has to be done and negotiated and navigated. But what's the great news right now is that people are starting to recognize that the pride and joy of Illinois needs to stay in Illinois. So everybody's working together now, which is not really the way it was 6 or 8 months ago. So we're on the right track finally.
Tell us, unpack this bill for us. As I understand, it would be in lieu of fees that a mega development such as this one would negotiate with you and all the taxing bodies. How exactly would that work?
Well, again, this is not a tax break. I hesitate to answer sometimes when people ask questions, well, why do we want to give the Bears a tax break? And it's not a tax break. It really is not. All the Bears are looking for is a reasonable and fair yearly property tax bill. And if you look around the entire country, whether you're looking at a brand new place like SoFi or even someplace like Wrigley Field or the United Center, they just want to be in the same ballpark, no pun intended, with property taxes. And the property tax bill that they were hit with when they bought the property was over $16 million per year. And SoFi, a completed stadium, is $8.8 million a year. So whatever the number ends up being, negotiating that with the local jurisdictions, our Arlingtonites, our school districts, and so on. That's the whole goal of this pilot program. Put it in the hands of those folks who are going to be the, the beneficiaries of this property.
And we mentioned that the House is now adjourned until March 18th. Do you think Illinois has that much time to get their act together and come back and vote on something when you see that Indiana's crossed the finish line?
Yeah, I got to say, Indiana is bright. They're wise. They're trying very hard. I would be, if I was the governor of Indiana or the mayor of Hammond, I would be pushing hard just as they are. So I respect them for what they're doing. Illinois has some work to do to wrap this up, but I'm confident they will. Governor Pritzker is fully behind this now. Certainly we are here in Arlington Heights, and I think the legislators around the state recognize how important this is. So there's a schedule, unfortunately, that Illinois goes through with all of these things. And what's really encouraging right now is that they jumped through some pretty big hoops here this morning. Not very usual. This was something pretty unusual that happened. And I think everybody takes notice when that kind of stuff happens. So getting through this House Revenue and Finance Committee the way they did today was a really good sign and a big step in the right direction. And
we mentioned some first downs here for Illinois, but they still have a few yards to go before getting to the goal line and walking off with the win. All right, Mayor James Tenalia from Arlington Heights, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
You as well, Paris. Thanks.
All right, take care. Well, back to the fiscal front in the city, Chicago's credit rating takes a big hit. What that downgrade means for taxpayers when we come back. Welcome back. So you remember how the mayor didn't sign the city council budget proposal late last year and also did not veto it. He just let it go into law, but then claimed it's still way out of balance. And now there's some consequences. Prominent credit ratings agencies just dinged the city's bond rating down to BBB+, which means taxpayers will foot the bill for higher borrowing costs. And we know the city does billions of dollars in borrowing. And joining us now to tell us what this means for everybody is Linda Vanderpeer, Managing Director at KBRA, a bond rating and credit rating analysis agency. Ms. Vanderpeer, thanks for speaking with us. So give us the reasons why Fitch and Kroll knocked the city's credit rating down as it did.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Kroll, or KBRA, downgraded the city's rating yesterday, and it's really because of our view that its financial flexibility has weakened. Specifically, we're seeing a deterioration in reserves, narrower liquidity, and very high and rising fixed costs, especially for pension and debt service. And when fixed costs consume a growing share of the budget and reserves are thin, as is the case here, that really limits the government's ability to absorb economic shock. And that's really the core issue that drove the downgrade.
And might this have been avoided if the city leaders and the mayor had come to an agreement on a budget? Because we mentioned they couldn't agree. There was a consternation over a corporate head tax. But if there had been an actual agreement, would it have softened the concerns of the rating agencies?
If that actual agreement had entailed a greater use of recurring revenue, then I think perhaps it might have softened the rating agency's views here. As it was, the alternate budget that was approved by City Council did contain about $398 million or so of recurring revenue. So it was about a third of the total revenues in the budget for the corporate fund. But the other sources that were relied upon to close the close to $1.2 billion corporate fund budget gap were, in our view, either untested or very small in nature in terms of magnitude, not likely to really contribute to meaningful structural balance, or in the case of certain of the taxes, subject to legal challenge.
So obviously not sound financial practices for the long term to deal with a structural problem. So what does this mean when you're notched down from AAA minus to BBB plus? What does it mean for borrowing costs?
Well, rating agencies calculate ratings from AAA to below investment grade. So yesterday, KBRA revised the rating on the city's bonds from A- to BBB plus. That was a one-notch downgrade. And we also assigned a negative outlook. So BBB plus is still investment grade. It means that the city has adequate capacity to meet its financial obligations, but it has less of a cushion, perhaps, than higher rated governments. So many large U.S. cities are rated in the AA or A categories. A BBB plus would place Chicago towards the lower end of the investment grade spectrum. But again, this isn't a question, in our view, of whether the city can pay its bills. It's really about eroding flexibility and rising risk. So
does that mean that borrowing costs, the interest costs might not go up? I mean, I guess it just depends on the market, but obviously credit ratings are a huge factor.
Absolutely. Credit rating can certainly affect how much it costs the city to borrow for capital projects. When a rating goes down, investors might require a slightly higher interest rate in order to compensate them for higher perceived risk. If the city does have to pay higher interest costs on its debt over time, it would tend to further lessen budgetary flexibility, which in the case of Chicago is already strained. I think at the BBB level, investors tend to focus more closely on reserves. They look at liquidity, they're looking at structural balance. So maintaining discipline at the BBB category becomes even more important. But I think that said, the city has a lot of things going for it, very resilient, diversified, growing tax base. It's the economic hub of the Midwest. It's seen continued expansion in high wage sectors that we expect are going to support growth over the near term. So it's not really a lack of resources. It's how constrained those resources are by fixed obligations and how likely it is that meaningful sources of new recurring revenue can be implemented.
All right, a lot of difficult decisions for the mayor and for city council. Linda Vanderpeer of KBRA or Kroll, one of the agencies that knocked the city's credit rating yesterday. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
And when we come back, we meet the Libertarian candidate who wants to be assessor of Cook County right after this. Welcome back. Well, in case you missed it, we've had quite a lot of debates here in the last few weeks. One of them, the tightly contested Democratic primary for Cook County Assessor, and that's the office that sets the values that your property taxes are based on for the 1.9 million parcels of land here in this giant county. Now, Democrats Fritz Kagi and Pat Hines went toe-to-toe, and there's a candidate of a third party who wants to make his case. His name, Nico Tsatsoulis, and he is the Libertarian candidate running for assessor. Nico Tsatsoulis, thanks for being with us. So clearly you believe the choice of Fritz Kagi, Pat Hines in the Democratic primary is not a good choice for voters. How come?
Thank you for inviting me, Paris. I think it's a fake dilemma. These guys are two sides of the same coin. We've had Democrats as assessors, I think since 1932 when the assessor's position was created. That's 10 guys since then, 9 elected, 1 appointed. And we've had the same result over and over again, which is higher taxes and assessments that do not make any sense. They're unpredictable and all over the place.
And as I understand, the current assessor, Mr. Kagi, had reassessed your home on the south side, and it spiked your bill 400%. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it was not my home. It's a property that I bought. Yeah. Right. I bought for $195,000, and then he wanted me to pay $110,000 in taxes. I thought that was crazy, and that's why I'm running. I'm not a career politician like these guys. I'm your regular Joe.
Did he give you an explanation?
There is no explanation. I don't think I'm the only victim. I think it happens all over the place. Like I said, assessments are crazy, and the major reason is they are subjective. We don't have an objective system of figuring out assessments.
Well, he's saying there is a formula, there is a system. The assessors are out there in the field, but then there's a formula that goes into this. So you're saying it's not, it's more objective.
They're using mass appraisal methods, and these figures come out crazy. What I'm saying is we need to move from a subjective to an objective property system. And that way, we're going to have assessments that make sense. The biggest problems now, Paris, is the fact that we have very huge levies. It's close to $9 billion in Chicago and over $19 billion in Cook County. The levies have to come down. And the other thing is that the assessment process has to be changed from subjective to objective.
Well, the levies coming down is not necessarily in your purview. I mean, that's going to be the government's having to spend less and reduce their budgets.
Correct. But with what I'm proposing, the levies will have to come down, because what I'm proposing is limit taxes to 1% of the purchase price of the property.
So never going above 1%.
Never going above 1%.
We actually had some Republican candidates for governor that support that notion, but you would have to get that through Springfield, no? So would you go down and lobby for that?
I would, but voting for me is a mandate to the Illinois General Assembly that people want these changes. So obviously I would go down there, but I think they would get the message once people vote for me that that's what they want. And this is what happened in California in 1978, because I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Basically, I'm proposing Proposition 13, which limits property taxes to 1% of the purchase price and not the assessment value. Because like I said, the assessment process is subjective, and we need to change that.
And you know, you're very aware, I'm sure, that this last assessment cycle saw the largest median increase, around 16.7%. That's the largest in 30 years. Lots of studies showing that it is disproportionately hitting middle to lower income residential property owners. How do you relieve the burden on these residential owners?
Yeah, so the assessments today are overinflated intentionally. The result is that black and brown communities are hurt the most. These are the people with the least resources, financial resources, and information to appeal their taxes. So they are the biggest victims. The black and brown households are the biggest victims of the present system.
The big corporations are going to appeal, and they're getting their tax breaks, and everyone else is making it up.
Exactly. So everybody else can go and have the taxes appealed, but they are also victims because they pay something to the tune of $300 to $500 million a year to property tax lawyers to bring their assessments down. That's what I like to call institutionalized corruption. There is a tacit agreement, in my view, between the assessor's office and the lawyers, the property tax lawyers. Under my administration, these guys will not have any business anymore. They will have to move out of state.
Because you're saying that the assessments will be so accurate that they won't be able to even appeal.
I will immediately from day one deflate the overinflated assessments. The result will be that black and brown households are going to be paying less, and the rest of the people who do appeal today will be saving $300 to $500 million a year that goes to property tax lawyers.
So they won't be appealing, but they won't be spending the money on the property tax lawyers.
Yes. Don't forget, Mike Madigan and Ed Burke were both property tax lawyers.
And Madigan helped write the law that created the need for these lawyers.
Right.
Very quickly, commercial properties tax assessed at 25% of value, residential at 10%. Would you keep that formula? That's to, again, shift the balance onto commercial and off of residential.
Okay, why Cook County voted that is so that commercial owners subsidize residential owners. And they did that so that residential owners do not know exactly how high the levies are. I think this is unfair to everyone. I think they should be taxed the same. But under my regime, they're going to be taxed the same anyway because they're going to be taxed at 1%.
All right, Nico Tsoulis, the Libertarian candidate for Cook County Assessor. Thanks for joining us. Election Day, March 17th.
Thank you,
and
Paris.
thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'm off next week. We'll see you the week after.